Welcome to the weather forecast on CIA TV channel. Dear friends, in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that will affect the United States over the next 7 days. Several dangerous storms are moving into the United States over the next few days, bringing with them a significant risk of severe weather, including strong winds, large hail, and the potential for tornadoes. We'll start with what's happening across the country today. Right now, we have an area of showers and storms that is starting to develop right now back over the mid-Atlantic. This is expected to bring strong winds and significant hail throughout the afternoon and evening today. Then, another severe weather risk is possible tomorrow across the East Coast. And we're going to see the potential for a major storm system that could bring all the severe weather hazards from now through Saturday across the Great Plains, and then eventually into the Midwest and the Ohio Valley on Friday and Saturday. Now, let's talk more about the severe weather potential over the next few days. Starting today, we have an enhanced severe weather risk level 3 out of 5 for South Dakota and Nebraska. There's also a slight risk back in Montana and even into the central and northern plains, and then another slight risk along the East Coast from South Carolina back into Maryland and New Jersey. All of the severe weather hazards are going to be discussed today in our enhanced risk level. Note that we have an area marked for damaging winds in North and South Dakota and also into Nebraska that could see damaging winds of up to 80 to 90 miles per hour this afternoon and tonight. So large to very large hail is also likely across a large area that we're tracking, primarily in North and South Dakota, where hail could be as large as apples. And on top of that, there's a low risk of tornadoes today, which will be mostly across North and South Dakota, where there could be an isolated tornado or two, but that depends on the storm system. We also wouldn't be surprised if we saw an isolated tornado again in areas like Maryland, Delaware, maybe even Northern Virginia. The threat of severe weather continues across the Great Plains and the East Coast, where there's a chance for more scattered severe weather. This includes the potential for damaging winds in both the central and northern plains, as well as along the East Coast. Large hail is also possible. It wouldn't be surprising if we had a storm or two that produced baseball-sized hail in Nebraska tomorrow. And then the actual tornado threat is a little more interesting. There's a chance of an isolated tornado moving from Des Moines all the way into western Nebraska into the Sandhills. And as we head into Friday, the severe weather threat will continue from the Midwest back into the Central Plains. A small threat along the East Coast. We're sure there's a small risk of severe weather that's definitely ongoing, especially for folks in Iowa, northern Missouri, northeastern Kansas, and eastern Nebraska. We think there's still a chance for even a small-scale severe weather outbreak, maybe even a tornado outbreak. As a remnant low-pressure system moves through Nebraska, there's going to be a lot of vortices and twisters in this environment. But at the very least, strong winds and hail are going to be a possibility from northern Minnesota back to the landmass. Now let's take a look at the severe weather day by day, starting today. It looks like around 3 o'clock, some scattered showers and thunderstorms have started to develop. Those showers will continue to intensify around 4 to 5 o'clock. The main concern with all of these storms is the strong winds. I really don't expect anything too far from that scattered level. A lot of strong winds could develop from North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia back into Pennsylvania around 5 to 6 o'clock as the storm moves into Maryland and eventually Delaware and even western New Jersey. We think this is when the tornado threat peaks, but there really isn't much of a tornado threat. But if we do see a tornado, it will likely develop around 5 to 8 o'clock, mostly in this corridor where there will be enough wind shear to create an isolated tornado threat. But overall, we're talking mostly about a wind threat. Around 9 to 10 tonight, we're going to have a pretty organized line of storms that will move right through Delaware. And after midnight, all of those storms will move offshore. So be prepared for some wind damage here. Power lines, trees could easily come down because of this. And tomorrow we're going to have another threat of at least some localized to scattered severe weather, mostly across the Carolinas and Georgia, or potentially some locally damaging winds. I also want to note that flash flooding is becoming a pretty big concern today with all of the storms that we're going to see here across the mid-Atlantic. This area has been getting a lot of rain over the last couple of days from the remnants of Tropical Storm Chantal. certainly not going to rule out a few inches of rain today. Some localized areas could see as much as 6 to 8 inches of rain as this storm winds down. And then, back across the northern and central plains today, we're expecting storms to develop around 4 or 5 o'clock. Those storms, if they start to develop in a patchy fashion, could potentially produce strong tornadoes in this environment. But overall, we think the biggest concern across the board is going to be strong winds. So be prepared for a significant strong wind threat. And then, around 10 to 11 o'clock tonight, those storms will be approaching Omaha and also moving toward the Sioux City area. And then tonight into early tomorrow morning, they'll start to dissipate, and we'll have more storms developing tomorrow afternoon and evening across North Dakota and South Dakota. Overall, I think the severe weather threat tomorrow in the northern plains is going to be mostly strong winds and hail. The tornado threat is going to be pretty low here across the Dakotas, but further south in Nebraska, even Iowa, I think the tornado threat is going to be a little bit higher. These are significant tornado parameter values for both today and tomorrow. And note that there's going to be a small corridor late this afternoon into early evening, around 7, 8, 9 o'clock, that could potentially produce an isolated tornado if there are storms in that area.
But really, I think tomorrow is the day where we could actually see some real tornado risk. That tornado risk will be mostly in the late afternoon and early evening across Nebraska. We think the tornado risk is much lower as we get into the nighttime hours. But overall, there's still a chance for tornadoes, especially tomorrow. So tonight, the line of storms moving through Nebraska. Strong winds. The biggest concern is the initial thunderstorms that could create a tornado risk. Then tomorrow morning, we're pretty dry for the most part. And then later tomorrow afternoon, more storms will break out. If anything, it could be a little bit more stealthy. The tornado risk will be higher. But I'm really going to be paying attention to northeast Nebraska for that increased tornado risk tomorrow around sunset. As temperatures drop and the dew point gets closer to that, we're likely to have a little more favorable environment in northeastern Nebraska around 10 to 11 tomorrow night. Things are going to get very chaotic very quickly. If the storms get that chaotic, the risk of severe weather across the board is going to be very low. But if things can get organized and more contained, we could see at least a few tornadoes. So some factors to watch out for in the Central Plains. Then on Friday, our low pressure system will continue to move through Nebraska and Iowa, and we'll have another favorable corridor for at least some severe weather, including damaging winds, large to very large hail, and possibly a few tornadoes. So around 4 or 5, we're going to really be looking at an elevated tornado threat from Kansas City back into very northwest Illinois. However, strong winds and hail will be the main concerns for this event, and then there could be a few tornadoes. Here's the expected timing for Friday. Some showers and thunderstorms will be in the morning. The risk of tornadoes is almost zero at this point. But around 3-4 p.m., look for the storms to move from Des Moines back into southeast Nebraska, with all the potential hazards. If the storms move in a fairly straight line, we're mostly talking about the threat of damaging winds, but tornadoes in the path of the storms are also possible. This happens around 9 to 10 p.m. The storms will continue to move toward Fort Madison and then eventually move into far western Illinois by mid to late evening. And then at night, the storm track will finally start to break up as it approaches Chicago as well as Milwaukee. Then on Saturday, we'll see another severe weather threat from the Great Lakes back into the southern plains. But overall, isolated severe weather is the biggest concern from that event. We're looking at isolated severe weather, maybe even some scattered severe weather from the highlands and southern plains back into the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes. Damaging winds with hail are the biggest concern. On Sunday, we'll see another day of thunderstorms across the Ohio Valley, but overall, severe weather will be lower on Sunday. Next Monday, we could see another significant storm system return. So if that's actually confirmed, we could see a more significant and strong severe weather threat in the northern plains and upper Midwest on Monday. I think Tuesday looks similar for areas like the Midwest. Not as strong, but at least we could see some isolated severe weather on Tuesday back into the Midwest. And then next Wednesday and Thursday, things get a little more uncertain. There is a low chance of a tropical area developing in the Gulf sometime in the middle and late next week. So that will be something to keep an eye on, especially as we have a high pressure system over the Midwest as well as the Ohio Valley around the same time frame.
So that's something to keep an eye on right now. We will continuously update the storm situation in the next news. Please subscribe to the channel to follow. Thank you for watching the news on CIA TV channel.